The stagecoach rumbled into Silver Creek, its wheels kicking up a cloud of rust-colored dust. 19-year-old Ellie peered out, her heart beating in her chest like a nervous bird. The mountain town in Colorado was like a wound on the Rocky Mountains, with buildings clinging to the slopes like stubborn lichen. The air, saturated with the smell of pine and acrid coal smoke, carried the rhythmic ringing of pickaxes, a constant reminder of the town's harsh heart. This was where her new life with Thomas, the surveyor she had met in the marriage ads, was supposed to begin. Her father, Sheriff Caleb, had agreed to it with great reluctance. "A man you've never seen, Ellie?" he grumbled, but his gaze softened, as it always did when he looked at her. A look that mixed love and worry, which she knew was caused by the town gossip and whispers about her full figure. "But it's a chance," he admitted, "a chance to start over." Outside the Wells Fargo office stood a man, taller and slimmer than she had imagined. He took off his hat. "Miss Ellie Thompson, I presume?" His voice was soft, but a little deeper and rougher than in his cautious, thoughtful letters. "Mr. Thomas Ashton," she replied, holding out her gloved hand. His handshake was firm, too quick. "The one and only, welcome to Silver Creek." He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. They were strikingly dark brown, almost black. Ellie frowned inwardly. The letters had described eyes the color of the summer sky after rain. Later, in the small, sparsely furnished room above the general store that Thomas had rented for her before the wedding, Ellie unpacked her meager belongings. Her hand trembled as she took out the only photograph of Thomas. It was a stiff, formal portrait, but she had studied it countless times. The man in the photograph had lighter eyes, slightly softer features, and a faint silver scar above his left eyebrow, a reminder of a childhood fall, which he had described in amusing detail in his letters. The man below, who called himself Thomas, had no such scar. Her unease turned into a cold lump of fear. His manner was also a little strange. The Thomas in the letters had been attentive, asking lots of questions about her life and her thoughts. This man was polite but distant, his conversation strained, and he deftly avoided her attempts to recall their correspondence. When she mentioned the blue wildflowers that he had promised grew abundantly near his camp, he merely nodded, his dark eyes revealing nothing. The next day, wanting to get away from his unnerving presence, Ellie wandered over to the stables. The smell of hay and horses was a small comfort. And then she heard his voice, quiet and insistent, coming from inside. "The plan is ready. As soon as the dowry is in our hands and she is officially bound, we will begin seizing the miners' plots. They won't suspect anything from a grieving widower." A rough, unfamiliar voice replied, "What about the real Ashton?" "He's been taken care of. He won't interfere." Ellie froze. The dowry, the miners' plots, the real Ashton. This man was not just someone else. He was an impostor, a snake in her promised paradise. Her small dowry, painstakingly saved, was clearly part of his plan. Or worse, perhaps her life was in danger too. Panic gripped her. Silver Creek was a closed community, its residents suspicious of outsiders. The saloon girls, painted and brazen, were already giggling as she passed by, and their whispers of corn-fed and catalog failure stung her ears. Even the shopkeepers looked at her with cautious curiosity, bordering on distrust. Who would believe her, a newcomer, against a man who seemed to have already settled down, even if only temporarily? A telegram arrived from her father. "I hope you've settled in. Be sensible, Ellie. This is your best chance. Don't ruin it." His words, meant to reassure her, now felt like a noose around her neck. He wouldn't understand. He would think she was eccentric and hysterical. Desperate for an ally, Ellie felt drawn to the quiet efficiency of the Chinese laundry in the city. May, the woman who ran it, was an island of calm in a noisy city. Her dark eyes, unlike those of the impostor, were full of penetrating understanding. One afternoon, gathering her courage, Ellie spoke in a barely audible voice, hinting at her fears. May listened patiently, continuing to fold the laundry rhythmically. "Men often wear masks," she finally said in clear English. "Some for protection, some for deception. Do you see the mask?" Ellie nodded, feeling relieved. "Yes, and I don't know what to do." "Watch," May advised, "and I'll help you listen." True to her word, May, thanks to her network of quiet informants among the laundry's customers and her own discreet observations, began to help Ellie piece together the truth. The impostor, who called himself Jack Slade, was a notorious con man. He and his accomplice were indeed planning to use Ellie's marriage, and possibly her subsequent convenient widowhood, as a cover to defraud the miners of their newly staked claims by forging documents. The real Thomas Ashton, as May learned from quiet conversations, had last been seen heading into the dangerous Redstone Canyon a week before Ellie's arrival. His fate was unknown. Ellie's heart ached. Had the real Thomas ever loved her? Were his letters, full of warmth and intelligence, sincere? Or was she just a means to an end for him? The fear of being unloved, a fear that had haunted her for years, threatened to consume her. She clung to memories of his words, of the dreams they had built together, even as the evidence against Slade mounted. However, with each new discovery, her resolve grew stronger. Her worth was not tied to Thomas, real or imagined. It lay in her own courage, in her honesty. The day of the supposed wedding was approaching. Slade was becoming bolder, his possessiveness more apparent. Ellie knew she had to act, and act quickly. Armed with the information May had gathered, and the evidence of a photograph showing a missing scar and lighter eyes, Ellie decided to stage a public confrontation. The ceremony was to take place in the town hall, a roughly hewn but imposing building. The hall was filled with curious townspeople, the mayor, and even a few girls from the saloon, eager for a spectacle. Slade stood at the front, dressed in a new suit. Ellie walked down the makeshift aisle, her steps surprisingly steady. When she reached Slade, she did not offer him her hand. Instead, she turned to the crowd. "This wedding cannot take place," she announced in a clear, strong voice that echoed in the sudden silence. Slade narrowed his eyes. "Ellie, what do you mean?" "I mean, Mr. Slade," she said, emphasizing the unfamiliar name, "that you are an impostor." A gasp went through the crowd. "This woman is hysterical," Slade growled, trying to laugh. "Really?" Ellie held up the photograph. "This is Thomas Ashton, the man I agreed to marry. Look at the scar above his left eye. Look at the color of his eyes." Then she pointed directly at Slade. "This man has no such scar. His eyes are black as night. This man is not Thomas Ashton." She repeated what she had overheard in the stable. The plan to deceive the miners. His mention that the real Ashton had been taken care of. May, standing quietly behind her, nodded in confirmation when all eyes turned to her, lending silent conviction to her words. The miners in the crowd began to murmur, their faces darkening. They knew about the betrayal at Redstone Canyon. "She's lying. She's a discarded woman trying to save her reputation," Slade growled, losing his composure. "Then explain it," Ellie insisted, never taking her eyes off him. "Explain how you know about Mr. Ashton's business, but you don't know the small personal details he shared with me in his letters. Details that only the real Thomas could have known." Her words, calm and reasonable, carried more weight than Slade's panicked denials. The townspeople, initially skeptical, began to look at Slade with growing suspicion. The mayor stepped forward. "Mr. Ashton, perhaps you would like to explain these discrepancies?" Slade, cornered and exposed, made a desperate attempt to flee, but the miners, their faces grim, blocked his way. Within minutes, he was arrested, and his accomplice was quickly apprehended thanks to information provided by May. After that, while Slade sat in the town jail awaiting the district judge, a search party was organized to find the real Thomas Ashton. Ellie remained in Silver Creek, but no longer as a bride, but as a woman who had found her voice. The girls at the saloon no longer teased her, and the shopkeepers smiled shyly at her. Her father, upon receiving a detailed telegram, was not disappointed, but felt immense pride. The question of Thomas's fate and the true nature of his feelings remained unanswered. Was he a victim, or just another man with his own agenda? Ellie didn't know, but when she looked at the rugged mountains, the scent of pine trees no longer seemed like a harbinger of fear, but like the breath of freedom. She had faced deception and prejudice, struggled with her deepest insecurities, and emerged from this situation not as Mrs. Thomas Ashton, but as Ellie Thompson, a woman who knew her worth, a worth that no man, real or pretender, could ever determine. The echo of the pickaxe no longer sounded like a threat, but like the insistent beating of the heart of the future she would create for herself.